Welcome to another episode of Risky Thoughts.
I'm Rob.
And I'm Roy. And today, this is the episode called Law Abiding Citizen. And why we're calling it that episode is because I got arrested. I'm actually not even sure if I'm allowed to talk about. It's not like criminal, guys.
You can talk about it. You weren't arrested. You were detained.
I was detained.
They put you in cuffs.
They put me in cuffs and put me in the back of the thing. I was on my motorcycle, right? And like, here's the thing, guys. With a motorcycle, it accelerates very quickly and decelerates extremely quickly. So sometimes to maneuver, you need to accelerate. And I accelerated and...
Just stop, Roy.
Okay.
You didn't. You were going fast because you wanted the thrill of it.
Yeah, okay.
And you got pulled over.
I got pulled over and
Yeah.
the guy was mad and whatever. Things happened and... Okay.
So...
And now I'm tripping. I actually... there's two sides of me right now. There's one side that like during the moment I was enjoying it. You know, like I was actually enjoying it. But now I'm like tripping out because I'm like, holy fuck, like bad things can happen. I'm not going to say what because it's going to piss me off, but like bad things can happen. But like at the end of the day, it's just like, bro, who the fuck cares? Now you, Rob, your job now is to do what you're going to do because, little spoilers, like you've gone through some things. I have gone through some things.
You've gone through
a lot of things.
I want to explore the part of you that actually enjoyed the experience first because that's the part that is probably the most, satisfying.
It was satisfying.
Like hearing about why you found it enjoyable will be satisfying to me because I want to understand. Like this is part of understanding Roy, his character, his history, who he is,
yes.
What experiences have led you to where you are today. Because my take on it is like I know why you enjoyed it, and the reason I know why you enjoyed it is because I went through it and I also felt the same way about it.
Yes.
And it's got to do with like feeling like the bad boy, right? You're an engineering student,
yes,
right? Or you were a long time ago, and you grew up in a relatively strict Indian household.
Yes.
So you were always following rules. You were always confined to the cage that your parents put you in, and society, and so on and so forth. And you were well behaved, and this and that, and that's why you are still well mannered today. But I think through those years, you actually were envious of some of the people who were breaking the rules back in high school, elementary school, the ones that were considered to be the cool kids and the ones that were like, put on a pedestal back in those days. And whether you consciously believe this or not, I think subconsciously this is what's happened. And I think that now that you're like breaking the rules and you got caught for breaking the rules, there's a part of you that makes you feel like, yeah, like look at me, I'm cool too. So I think that's what drives that sensation of why you felt good in the moment.
Okay, so I do want to prune. Okay, so your comment was I felt envious of the bad boy, and I think I do know that is a correct, like it is a part of the entire argument, right? So yes, in a prelude, 100%, I was definitely envious of those people breaking the rules because I couldn't break the rules. That's taken a back burner, and now I'm a little bit further along in that, but it's still tethered to that idea. So I just want to add to it,
Of course,
so it's correct. But more of it is like just the priority here, and the main argument is like being caged, and then now having a little bit of freedom to make my own decisions rather than, no, don't do that. Stay around the block. Don't go, like that freedom is a lot more of a drive rather than like
the envy.
The envy is like,
sure. Yeah, that's fair. I actually agree with that as well. What I just said was sort of off the cuff. And now that you're making me think about it a little bit more, you're right.
Yes.
And it's pretty typical. Anybody that grew up as a well-behaved, well-mannered, well-disciplined child,
yes,
everybody has that little bit of them that's just like you want to be free. You want to be, removed from like the chains and the shackles that you have that sort of kept you in line and sort of like, following the rules of society.
Yeah.
And it's good that you feel that. It's good that you had that upbringing as well because, I mean, it means that your foundation is still well founded. You know, like you still have a good backbone in terms of knowing right from wrong.
Yes.
Right, that's very important. And
for the record, like I was speeding, and I do say, like, on a motorcycle, it is hard. Like, my motorcycle is a little bit shorter to the ground, so it's like I'm taller. I can't see the speedometer. You know what I mean? I was going fast. You know what I mean? I was going fast, but I just, you know, and I knew I was going fast.
okay, let's be very clear here.
Yes.
You were going 2.5 times the speed limit.
Well,
There's no questioning. You can't say with any reasonable judgment.
well, what is speed, Rob? If we look at it on like a physics, anyways, like, I was going fast. Yeah. Okay. And, you know, like, yes, I was going fast. I was going, you know, double the speed limit. And, I just also want to color this in. Like, there's two ways I could have handled this. Like, you know what I mean? I could have been like the person who gets caught and was crying. Like, I'm like, oh no, please, just, this can't happen to me. My parents are gonna, you know, or like someone's, you know, or I'm gonna lose everything. You know what I mean? Or you just, once again, I took it kind of on the chin, but I didn't take it on the chin because I didn't think I did anything wrong. I think even you analyzing me feels that Roy didn't do anything wrong.
So
I did something wrong.
Hold on a second. The first thing I said to you.
Yes.
When I came, so the way I found out about this is I was leaving the house to go to like a meeting, and you were sitting in your car and you came out and you're like, something really bad just happened.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, you were kind of smiling, so I'm like, no one died, but like, what happened? And then you told me, and we kind of talked about it for a brief couple of minutes, and I was just like, yo, man, like, first things first, you may have taken it on the chin, as you said, but you were still very mopey about what just happened.
Yeah.
And that's understandable because it was a pretty extreme situation. Like, especially if you've never been in cuffs before.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to be shell-shocked from it.
Yeah. So I didn't get charged with anything. It was just...
Correct.
When you're on a motorcycle, I have to also color... Because I don't want people making the wrong... Some assumptions here that, like, I'm fucking... Like, I was like a dick. It's just that when you're on a motorcycle, typically people on a sports bike will fly off. Because they can go so fast, they will escape an officer. This is a reality. This is like in the culture. I'm on a cruiser. I can't go that fast. There's like I'm not even gonna try a maneuver like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I also think it's in who you are.
It's not who I am. It's just like, so my mask was on. He's looking at me, and I can't really hear because of all the noise and my exhaust. And so he's just like, he said it a couple of times. I can't hear him, and then he got angry, and then whatever. He just like. He quickly just got in and executed a procedure, right?
So, okay, the reality is you did something wrong, and the important part is that you need to understand that there are consequences, and you need to own those consequences.
Yes.
And your initial response was kind of just like, what you told me was that, like, you told the cops something similar about, like, you had some shit going on in your life when he asked you what happened. When, like, I think your response really should have just been like, I was fucking speeding. Like, there's nothing more. There's nothing to say. There's no reason as to why. There's no justification for it. I was speeding. Yeah. That's it. You know, I broke the rules, and you caught me breaking the rules, and now I'm being punished for it. Yeah. And this is a just punishment. Like, that is the true response that you really should have. Yeah. Now, no one is like that honorable, right? Like, I mean, some people are, but it's understandable as to why you tried to immediately like deflect and find a reason for it. But
find an excuse for it.
You know, you kind of like said, you know, you were like, in the moment, you were feeling kind of good about it because, again, you were being caught breaking loose out of the cage, right? That's, I think, the epitome of what we're really trying to get at here. Yeah. And I think that is something that is good and bad because, you know, just like when a little boy is learning, you know, what the world is like, and what, like my son, for example, he's 2. Yeah. You know, and he's going to do things that are going to like test his limits and test my limits, and he's going to want to like learn how far can I push things, you know. Yes. Yeah. And it's good for them to do the exploring, just like, you know, your experience today. You did some exploring in some way. You know, you were breaking rules that you knew you shouldn't be breaking. Yeah. And that was you just like feeling out that space. And it was liberating and so on and so forth. And then you got caught for it. Yes. Just like my son can get caught for doing something wrong. And when he does, he gets yelled at. Or, you know, disciplined in a way that I think is appropriate. And so were you. You were disciplined in a way that the government feels is appropriate. Yeah. So, you know, it's really important to identify that, like, even though you felt good in that moment because of some, you know, psychological reason that's rooted in your childhood and whatever, yes, the most important part that trumps all of this is like the recognition of wrongdoing and acceptance of consequence, because this is now, you're going to be facing a consequence. There's
Yes.
no doubt about that.
Yeah,
You can fight it.
I'm already facing it.
Yeah, well, this is the beginning of it,
Beginning,
man.
yeah.
Like, wait till the actual consequences come from the action, right? Like, you're
Yes.
going to start paying more on your insurance and
Yeah,
blah, blah,
I
blah.
know.
And
Yeah.
then you're really paying for it, you know? And, like, it's going to suck and it's going to feel like shit. But the reality is it happened for a reason,
Yeah.
you know? And those consequences are due. You owe the world those consequences.
I owe this society.
Yes.
I am like, listen, I'm very apologetic to everybody living here in Canada. I'm that's honest. Like, I'm honestly telling everyone that I am sorry for speeding, right? But I'm also not. So I don't know how to deal with this kind of like dilemma, this paradox here.
Okay, so like I
Yeah.
really want to go back to what you and I used to do on these things,
Sure,
and what we used to do
sure.
with just each other when we're talking. I want to understand the why. Like, I want to understand the feelings that you're having and why you're having them.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, from your perspective, what do you believe created this feeling of like this positive emotion after
Yeah.
this experience or during the experience? Why do you think you felt good?
I felt good because, you know, I got caught. Like, I got caught doing something that was wrong.
Okay, that's a very surface level answer. Like, dig deeper, Roy. Why did you feel good? You even explained to me that there was a moment where a girl was walking by and you kind of felt like a tough guy because you winked at her.
Yeah, you know, she's like staring at me like, what the
Right?
fuck's going on?
So there's
I just,
something
winked
there.
at her
Like,
like a
obviously
fucking crazy.
You felt like it made you bigger than you are, but why?
It's just, it's just breaking the rules. That's it. And we live in a society where we're caged. Like, this is like, let's even go back to the philosophy, right? Like, the philosophy, and I forgot who it was. It could have been Nietzsche, right? It could have been somebody else, right? And they were just saying that, like, the common man, right, is we are ruled by fear, right? We're ruled by fear. I am ruled by fear. I am filled with anxiety 24/7 a day. You know, like, we live in a fucking safe country, right? But for some reason, we're all still feeling anxious about the future. We're feeling all this kind of stuff, right? We feel fear, right? And it's also indoctrinated by all these rules and all these kind of things that we have to conform to. And me breaking that is like, for me, it's just like, you know, this is one step closer to being like not so governed by, oh, we all have to stay in line and, you know, maintain. I understand the benefits of staying in line. I understand them. It creates all this stuff that we talk about, right? But for me as an individual, as you increase that control on the individual, you're going to get these negative kind of thoughts in your head. And like, for me, it broke that and it relieved a lot of stress. And like, I'm going to pay for it and I'm going to get more stressed. But like, that moment, I felt good breaking the rules, right? I'm apologetic that I had to do this to feel good, you know?
Yeah. So, okay, you're breaking the rules. You're feeling liberated from society's grips.
Yes.
Or your parents' grips or whatever, because your
Whatever.
parents is a function of society's
society,
indoctrination.
yeah.
But I still don't. Why does that feel good?
It feels good because it's a drive that's deep down in all of us, that curiosity. It's the same drive your kid is doing right now, breaking the rules and checking what's going on. But he still does it. He still does it, and it keeps doing it. And that nerve is still within us right now to this day. Mm-hmm. Some of us have forgotten about that nerve, right? And this is very like a dangerous conversation. This is actually a risky conversation because it's a very anarchist type of mentality.
Yeah.
Right. But it's the anarchists that don't understand that, like, the flip side is that the law and order is paramount. Like, it is critical. We need that. Right. That's why I'm very apologetic. Right. But at the same time, like, I do care about Roy and I do care about breaking that, you know, and you know me in the last couple of years, I'm breaking rules here and there. bending things, right? Yes. You know,
Yeah.
right?
Okay. So the flip side to the argument of like
Yeah.
fulfilling whatever emotional need that you have,
Some drive, some primordial drive.
yeah.
You know?
So there is a consequence to this, and we've explored what the
Yes.
consequences are with your particular situation. But in general, breaking the rules also can form bad habits.
Yes.
Right, and like that's the part that I'm more concerned about for you,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
some of the things of late that you've been doing, some of actions that you've been taking on a regular basis, are still falling in the same category as what you are explaining right now. Like,
Yeah.
and like when it starts to become a habit, and I start to recognize I'm not going to call it an addiction to it,
Yeah.
but you're developing like
A risk for more serious consequence.
an affinity to just like this concept of breaking rules.
Yeah.
Right? And it's going to lead you into potentially like a place where there are
It's-
far greater consequences than getting a ticket.
You know, the thought that I had after this, I'm like, oh my God, like these consequences are going to be really bad for the next couple of months or month. Okay. And then I'm like, well, I'm actually one more step to go into prison. Like, actually, you know what I mean? Not really, but you know.
No, you are.
Yeah.
You are. Like, I mean, you
yeah.
are.
Yeah.
If you go through this experience and accept the consequences,
Yes.
and you treat them lightly, and you think that like no big deal, then it just means that you are now accepting that the next consequence that is greater than this one
Yes.
can only be incrementally worse than this. And if
Yeah.
this wasn't a big deal, then the next step is not a big deal either.
So then what we really have to do here is I need to come up with some sort of logical framework to determine why this is truly bad, right? And that's what we have to continue.
Yeah,
on
and we
our
need to.
conversation.
That's correct, and we
Yeah.
need to make sure that you pivot your thought
Yeah.
process
Yes.
to start perceiving the
Danger.
danger that's in front of you. Yeah,
I can imagine it. Like I said, I can. It's not like I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just so smart. I'm not going to get caught, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know that if I continue on with certain things, it's like it's not going to be good, right?
I don't even think that there's an evaluation taking place where you're thinking about, oh, I can get away with it or I can't. I don't even think you like it.
In that moment,
it does-
I like.
I just not even in the moment, just in general, it doesn't matter. It's not even a factor in your like decision matrix.
Right.
The only thing is like you're developing a thought process of I actually want to do something worse because I want to get caught again. And the high that you experienced tonight of that feel good sensation
Yeah, it was sick.
of breaking the rules
Yeah.
is not going to cut it, and you're going to need to do something that's far more intense, and you're going to need to get reprimanded with more punishment in order for you. So what I'm trying to get at here is that you're developing an affinity for punishment, which is bad, right? Because now it's like, okay, well, this happened. Now, if this happened to you again, it'd be like, whatever, I've been through this already. I'm not feeling that same rush I had when the cop pulled me over.
Right.
So now it's like, well, let me try robbing a store and like seeing what
Wow,
that feels
that's
like when I get
crazy.
caught.
Yeah, that's definitely.
What's the pathway that
crazy
you're on,
step.
man? Like, and I don't mean that in a serious way. Like, I'm not trying to
Yeah.
say like, oh my God, warning sign. Like, no.
Yeah.
But it is subtly there.
Yes.
And like combining that with the other incremental steps I've seen happening in the last little while, it's like this is a potential risk that I'm trying to flag to you now to be like, listen, man, cut this shit out. And we had this conversation like 6 months ago to a year ago.
But why? Okay, so let's go. Like, why do I have to cut? Why do I have to cut certain risk traits of mine out?
Because the consequences are only going to continue to steepen.
Okay, so what's the big deal with the consequence?
Because the consequence could end up with you in prison.
Okay, and what's
That can be a consequence.
And then my question is, what's so bad about that?
Have you been to prison?
No.
Okay. Do you think you want to know what prison is like? You think that you're in a prison now in the society that you live
Yeah.
in. You're actually going to be in a legitimate prison with walls around you, and you can't do anything until the guards say go ahead and do this.
Right.
And that's going to be it. And you're going to get your 2 hours of freedom a day to go outside, and I'm not going to even call it freedom.
Yeah. So our 2 hours. Yes.
My point is that you're not
Kind of like-
understanding the actual intensity of the consequences.
Yes. Yeah.
And your brain is doing exactly what an addict's brain does when it starts to try to feed itself more of whatever it is they're addicted to. It just convinces itself that, like, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. And it incrementally degrades into like a place that where your original self would have thought like, wow, I'll never end up there. This is what I'm getting at. So like when we talked 6 months ago to a year ago, you were doing something else that you shouldn't have been doing. Right. We won't talk about the details.
No.
And I explained to you then that this is bad for your conscience because you are lowering the bar for what you are going to determine to be acceptable behavior.
Yes.
And I didn't say it like that. I just said there's going to be adverse impacts to your psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, yeah, but whatever. Well, now you've taken it one step further. And I'm not even saying it's directly correlated or related at all. But there is something that is changing in Roy. Because your whole character, everything about you that I'm seeing now, I'm happy about it. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a much better Roy. But it's, let's curb it here. Because going past this point starts to become dangerous.
Like this is enough development.
Yes.
In terms of taking risk and...
Yes, you've done enough wandering in the forest. It's time to come back to the path.
To come back to the civilization.
Yes. And the reason I'm telling you all this is because you started this off by saying I had some stories of my own that speak to similar incidences. And like I'll divulge some of them now so that you know the listeners can understand what you're talking about. I also had an upbringing similar to yours. I also got to spend time in my university days, call it, where I was like Van Wildering it, which basically, for those of you who haven't watched the movie, I spent like an infinite number of laps in university just completing a simple degree. But the whole point is that in those days, I started to break loose of that constrained Rob that had the chain and shackle, right? Sorry, ball and chain is what I meant to say. And I broke it off, and I ran wild, and I caused all kinds of chaos. I did all kinds of drugs. I partied with all kinds of people. I got myself into trouble with the law. I got myself into trouble with bad people. I did a lot of things that I shouldn't have done. Mm-hmm. And everything happened incrementally to get me to where I would say was the bottom of my, of my life, like the lowest point of my life. And I got there not realizing that I was even on a path that led me there. I just kept thinking like, oh, this feels good. I feel great doing this. Like, I remember just, like, getting completely shit-faced, doing a bunch of drugs. And I remember specifically one night where I can recall everything around me, the smell, the feeling, the sounds, everything. And I remember the thought that went through my head that was like, you're on top of the world right now. Look, you can do anything you want. Right? I can do anything I want. There's no fucking restrictions. And I believed that that was the greatest thing in the world. Until all the bad shit that was associated with those behaviors and those actions started becoming realities. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, I was like, wow, okay, well, this sucks. This sucks. This sucks. This sucks. And then it got to a point where it was just like, I was embarrassed to even participate in like social circles that I used to participate in. Yes. I was ashamed to be in front of my family because of some of the things I had done.
Yes.
I couldn't hold down a relationship if my life depended on it.
Yes.
There's just like an infinite number of things that were just not going right. And like I didn't perceive those as consequences to the actions that I was taking because it just seemed like, oh, I'll never be at a point where everyone doesn't even want to associate themselves with me. Like I just didn't see it. And like I took very similar steps to what you're taking now. You're like a very adolescent stage of where I was when I went down this road. And I don't think that you'll ever get to the point because we're older now, and I think that you're going to smarten up faster than that because I was a lot younger. But like I chose some really fucking bad people to hang out with. I chose some really bad activities to participate in.
Listen, like I think the biggest thing in that story there that resonates with me that's actually affecting change in my mind is like, the suck that like entails after, and one of those sucks, this is where I conduct my own simulation and thought experiment. It's just like, Roy is someone who has quite a large network of people, right? Like a decently large, I don't have a girlfriend or like a wife or kids. So I spend my free time networking and continue to build that network. Right. And like, the thought of me losing that network of people, right, over a speeding ticket or worse, you know, like that is something that actually is like, whoa, the network is greater. The network of people, you guys, if I can't record a fucking podcast, right? And, you know, we never get to that point where we charge $2.99 per episode. I'm just kidding around.
Slip it in there.
Just priming you guys, okay? But if I can never get to that point of just, you know, continue to grow the network of people, like that is the core of Roy. And if it's because I want to like have a jolly ride on my motorcycle, you know, and go fast and or worse things I could be doing, that is something I would have to do a cost benefit. And I'll be like, bro, the cost of the network is like infinite. It's infinite.
And the problem is that this is where the dissonance exists. Mm-hmm. Is that like, and anybody who has half a brain is not going to, you would never believe that like, oh, because you got a serious speeding ticket that was basically equivalent to reckless driving, that, oh, you're going to lose all your network of friends because your people are all going to dissociate themselves from you. That's not obviously what's going to happen as a direct consequence of this mistake. Yeah. It's the progression of the mistakes.
I understood
that can eventually begin to compromise it.
Listen, I'm good at simulating the future.
Right.
I'm pretty good at it and building that macroscopic. What does this look like in a couple of years? What is it turning into? You know what I mean? With all like the Bitcoin and Tesla, it's all I see it, right? And I see myself and I do agree with you. You know that there's certain points that. And I'm just explaining back to you so you understand like my point of view and my understanding is like what resonated with me to affect change is like, yes, like I am not feeling anything with this wrongdoing or whatever it is, right? We're not discussing whether the wrong I did is actually wrong in a moral sense, right? It's just wrong in a societal like law sense, but there are consequences that entail, you know, me not feeling that and not caring and being callous to it is dangerous, because that means if I'm callous to that, like completely nothing, that means just the degree even a little bit higher, I'm not going to be I'll be quite resilient to, right? And then so forth and so forth, right? So 2-3 degrees. Oh, Roy's busted on like fucking drug charges, like embezzling or working with fucking Al Chapo or something. You know, like that's when it starts to get like, you know, where obviously not that level, right? That's like a huge level of anxiety, but a couple more where maybe I'm doing something that I'm just pushing the limit a little bit more, right? And this is where I sincerely, once again, apologize to you guys, like to everybody who's listening. It's like, I apologize, like for breaking that law. We all are part of this fucking society, and these are the laws. They might be stupid, but we've all kind of agreed. Well, we haven't really agreed because we're kind of born into it, but this is how it works. This is part of the nature of humans, right? We have social construct, and this is part of the social contract. And I do apologize, and I do feel it, and I do feel the punishment is starting to settle in only with regard to what could potentially happen with the kind of core values of Roy, right? So
like, think about this scenario. What happened today was insignificant. It really is nothing in the scheme of things. And even having to apologize for speeding, everybody's fucking speeds.
Everybody fucking
right?
speeds,
now you were
bro.
Aggressively speeding, and you got caught.
Well, like I said, the motorcycles, they kind of accelerate fast.
Just imagine if today played out slightly different.
Yeah.
Imagine that an 8-year-old ran into the street to grab a soccer ball as you were driving by.
Yeah.
You're not stopping that bike. You would have hit the kid, and he probably would have died.
Listen, I was pretty much on a highway. There's no 8-year-olds. I get your point.
You got the point,
I get your point.
And like, so imagine the consequences of that, because that would have broken your network. Because then people in your network really would have judged you, and they would have said, like, I don't want to associate myself with a guy who took neglectful actions that caused death to a child.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
God.
It just would have taken a slight alteration to the situation to make things far worse. So this is where, like, you know, that shitty thing that happened to you today, when you first told me about it, you literally said, like, something really bad happened.
Yes.
And then you told me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, whatever, Roy. It's fine. Yeah. It's nothing. Not a big deal.
Yes.
You know, and like the fact that I react that way is not good for me either, because
it's not good for me either.
It just means
that was nothing. Fucking sick.
Yeah, like, and I shouldn't have said that to you, but you know, it just goes to show that, like, you know, I've been desensitized to wrongdoings as well, which is not a good thing either. But I'm actually quite cognizant of this, you know, and I'm aware of. That's why I don't do these things anymore. I don't speed anymore. I don't drink and drive anymore. I just don't do these things.
No.
I've realized that there's no value to it. There's no benefit.
Yes.
And like the consequences are real, and that was something that took me a really long time to understand.
Yes.
And actually, I hope we're kind of talking about some. This conversation wasn't as fluid as I was hoping it would be, but
that's quite. I think it's quite like there's some value at least.
well, there's continuity to some degree. Yeah. What I really wanted to get across though, as a message to listeners, because I don't know who the hell's listening to this thing, if they're young people, old people, whatever.
Yes.
If you are young, right, and you are of the mindset that like you're laughing when you heard about what happened with Roy today, and thinking to yourself that like what a joke, this is not a big deal. Just understand that like everyone always had their parents be like, you know, your parents gave you rules, right? And as a kid, you're just like, you question the rules and you just discount them, thinking like, oh, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You're just, you know, you're just a grumpy old person who thinks that, you know, the reality is your parents were your age at some point, and I know they even tell you this sometimes, and you don't really process it. But I'm starting to transition into that age group where I'm now going to be telling my son that I was your age once upon a time. And like, believe me, I've done it all. Like, there's nothing that anybody out there listening to this has done that I haven't done. Mm-hmm. And I've dealt with the consequences of all of those actions. And I'm just hoping that anybody out there listening to this who's younger or cockier, that thinks that they're, you know, exempt from the rules and exempt from the consequences, and that their model is better than society's model, I'm telling you that you're wrong. And I'm telling you from experience, Roy is now experienced something similar. He's had some impact as it relates to his behaviors. And like, please, just don't be ridiculous. We live in a subdivision, Roy, where there's little 17, 18-year-olds ripping their cars up and down these streets.
Like that. Listen, yeah, I know I keep going back to justifying myself. Like, I was on a fucking empty road. Like, there was just like, it was just in the middle of a woods. Like, there, like I said, point is, and there was barriers. You know what I mean? It was pretty much a highway. Right. Pretty much. Okay? Like, it was a highway where you can't, it's on a bridge. It was on a bridge. How the hell is anyone going to fly onto a bridge or get, like, you know, climb up a fucking bridge and get into my... Anyways, it was a momentary... Okay, whatever. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. But yeah, down here, people are ripping their fucking cars like at fucking... Yo, just today, literally, as I'm walking back, because I lost my bike.
You lost your license.
Yeah, lost it all. Right, I'm walking home like a dumb shit with a fucking helmet in my thing, and I just see a kid in like an Audi, and he's going like 80. Trust me, I know the speeds. Okay, he's going like 80 in the subdivision here, and he just blew past the stop sign. And people are just, I swear to God, across the street, there's a family just talking to, like, bro, they were like talking about it. And they're just like, man, the guy's going, there's so many kids on little e-bikes and stuff around here, and this guy's going like 80 to 100, you know? And I'm just like looking at them, and I'm like, yeah, I just yell, I'm like, what a fucking asshole. You know what I mean? I just like, I completely forgot about like what I was doing.
You just did?
I was just doing it because listen, context matters, right? So anyways, hopefully, whatever.
And the point that I'm trying to make here is that these kids obviously are of the mindset that the rules don't matter.
Yes.
And that like consequences, even though they know what they are because they've been told, they don't know. No. And they will. Some of them will find out the hard way one day when they actually do get into an accident and kill somebody. Or maybe they're going to end up in jail because they've done something else.
Yeah.
And like when those things happen to those people, they're going to wake up and realize that everything that they understood the world to be is a completely different story. And I just wish that people would use foresight to understand that that is a potential reality, and your decisions now make a huge difference for your future.
Right.
So if you're younger, please be careful.
So question, are we good on time?
We're at 35 minutes, so...
Okay, so I do want to... I'll give my rendition of it as well.
Of course.
So I know you're kind of advising people, and you're advising people, right? And for me, from this end, I have to kind of reiterate the effective kind of tool for one to use when making a decision of this nature is like what's working for me right now is because you're advising me, right? And it's just like, but not everyone's going to be receptive to the advice, right? You know what I mean? And for me, it's just like, even I at the beginning was not, right? But through simulating where things can go roughly, and spending a little bit of time thinking about what's at stake, right? So for me, I had to lay out my core objectives and then my decisions today and how they relate to the core objectives. Like if I don't have the thing that gives Roy meaning, like that is serious. That's a serious, like my brain's already switching gears and be like, okay, bro, I'm going to sell the bike and I'm just going to go on my car, just drive around very safely, all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? I already do that, but the point is like, you know what I mean?
I do.
Right? And I think hopefully you guys know what I mean. It's looking at your core objectives and seeing how your decisions can affect those things, right? Now, some people don't even have any meaning in their life. Like for me, the meaning is like this, this is it, right? This is the what gets me waking up every morning, right? Talking to people, hanging out. And if I can't do that, right? And if I'm filled with a bunch of toxic individuals, let's just say, I'm assuming people in prisons are, a little bit maladaptive in their personalities. And it's just like, that would definitely be not good. That would be something that would be horrible, right? And I'm not blaming the people in prison. It's like they too have just resulted in this because of their inability to foresee their decisions, right? Maybe they made them when they were kids, right? When they're developing them, like I feel bad, I feel pity, right? But the reality is just like, well, we're all human and we all have this kind of ability to kind of see what was going to happen to us if we continue down a certain road, and it's the wisdom that allows you to do that, right? That kind of foreseeing it, right? And so, the stories, yeah.
Can we that's something I want to explore myself and we'll try to keep it within the next 5 minutes. But one of my biggest failures, like I always thought of myself as being an intelligent person, but I never had the capacity to really look forward.
Yes.
Because had I had that capacity, or maybe I had the capacity, I just wasn't willing to look there. Maybe I was just afraid to look where I knew things were going to go because I just didn't want to face the music, right?
Yes.
I think that's more what happened. Not so much that I couldn't see the future. I chose not to look there on purpose. And I'm just really curious about that because, like, when you simulate it, if the outcome is not desirable, there's a good likelihood that you're going to just ignore it or pretend like it's not real. Fair. Right?
Yeah.
So how do you get someone who is in that stage of their life where they have, like, they're at the, they're right at the edge of making a bad decision or a set of bad decisions? How do you get them to stop from making those bad decisions by seeing the future of, like, what the consequences are going to be? Because I'm willing to wager that most kids, most teenagers or young 20-year-olds are just going to say, like, yeah, whatever. And then they just ignore it. They're just going to ignore what they know is possible. Why? Yeah. And how do you stop it?
When you're talking about that, and this may not fully answer your question, but it may offer one part of a solution. It's like all kids think that they're going to just be rich. This is from I forgot the Warren Buffett's person, Carnegie, right? And he just said, like, all young men are going to think that they're going to be rich and driving cars, right? But the reality is, like, they're 12 years old and they're thinking at 30, 40, they're going to be like, they're on a yacht and stuff. Like, we all have this sensation. You probably have something like that right now. I don't know. Maybe you don't, right? The problem with that is, like, it's just way too far out. And I'm leveraging Jordan Peterson's thing. It's like, it's just way too hard to predict, like, what the ultimate solutions, what it's going to look like based on the kind of initial variables right now, right? But what he did offer is, like, look 5 years into the future. Like, what does Roy look like 5 years from now, right? And when you bring it a little bit closer, in fact, even we've talked about what is the literal next step, right? It's somewhere you want to, I believe you want to inhabit your thoughts in the next, in a short time frame, right? And if you do that, then you have this ability to be like, well, Roy has a car, he has his license, he's able to do stuff, and you're going to do things that help you go towards that kind of goal, right? In a short temporal, but to kind of readdress your point there, it's just like, how does someone kind of like foresee that? And like I said, what I'm doing right now is I'm just simulating what's going to happen.
Right.
You have that imagination.
So the methodology you just presented will help. It will certainly help somebody better predict the future.
Yes.
Right, with more accuracy. But it still doesn't discount what I said about a lot of the time they're just going to ignore it. They may see what is possible in the simulation.
Yes.
They may run the simulation in their head a number of times, and the outcome always results in I'm going to get a ticket, or I'm going to go to jail, or I'm going to,
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, the problem is that they just ignore it. They know that's possible. They know more than that. They know that it's probable, but they'll still just ignore it, and they'll still take the risk.
Yeah. I think then that's actually where we go back to how you administer some sort of by recounting like what you've gone through, and it's almost like an Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Because that has actually been shown as like a very effective therapy through listening to other human beings, but listening, right? And then also engaging in that, right? That is something that actually does work, right? It's not just a solo type of fucking like a journey. It's like you got to listen to some of these stories, right? Like why did we even want to start this fucking business?
There's one of the kids.
Yeah, one of the fucking kids. Yeah, anyways, whatever. Why did we want to start this business? Because I listened to this one video of an old man. He's like 92 years old, right? And he's just like, I regretted. What are your regrets? That's the question. These YouTube videos. It makes it even easier in today's world with technology to watch these accounts, right? And he's just literally like, listen, I regretted all of the things I didn't do, but not one of the things I did, right? You're leveraging empathy and you're trying to get yourself into that guy's shoes, right? He's old. There's no more time left, right? And second is just like you're also engaging with your elders or somebody who's gone through similar experiences, right? So I think those two things are the first things that come up to my mind, right?
So what the reference to AA was actually quite interesting, because the other part of it is one of the pivotal steps in the program is to recognize your wrongdoings and make an inventory of everybody that you've hurt, including yourself if you're on that list.
Right.
And I think that's the part I think is the most important. Because at any given point in time, when you're on a bad path, there's someone who's been trampled or hurt or damaged in some way or another by your choices and your actions. And I know for me, like I had somebody that was close to me when I started making these bad decisions, and I definitely knew that I was compromising the relationship and hurting that person. But I never spent the time to think about it. No. Right. And I think maybe.
So why though? Like, so that's actually your question, right? It's
like, why didn't I think about it?
Well, your initial question was like, why do we not look at the bad, right, of what can happen? The bad, like all of the bad things that can materialize, the relationships damaged and all that stuff. One part is courage, but how do you get the courage? I don't know, right? But like the question is like, why? Because in the moment, we're all intelligent enough to foresee that this can happen. But like you said, we just kind of turn a blind eye to it, and one of the keys is to be able to look at that monster, right? To look at that kind of horrible situation of like everyone's dead, that apocalyptic scenario. And I hate to bring it back to society, and I know you're about to say something. It's like our society kind of primes us to not talk about the bad stuff.
I was actually going to say quite the opposite. That was
really
my point.
Society primes us to.
Well, what I find extremely fascinating is that we're so drawn to fucking bad news. Like, that's what the media lives on, right? Yeah. That's why everything in mainstream media is like, fucking COVID, the world's coming to an end. Yes. Like, everything is extreme fucking chaos and extreme bad shit. Yeah. Right? Like, you don't hear, there's no like anchor story that talks about like something happy or something good that's happening in the world. It's always bad shit. Yeah. And we're drawn to it. We and fucking love it.
Our movies nowadays are just even worse.
It's the same shit. Yeah. And like, but yet when it comes to our own bad things, we look at the exact opposite direction.
Yeah.
Actually, perhaps that's why we are drawn to the bad shit in the news. Because it distracts us from the bad shit in our own lives.
And makes us even feel better.
Right. Because, like, my life's not that bad.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know why we deflect away from it. Maybe it's a defense mechanism that's built into our programming. Because if we spend too much time dwelling on that kind of stuff, it could really cripple our emotions.
Yeah, we get depressed and stuff. And yeah. I think I have to reference another Nietzsche quote. It's just like, COVID's been with us for entire year, and we had to spend time with ourselves, right? And it's just he even said it takes a very special person to be able to look himself in the mirror and to spend a lot of time with himself, right? So it's like, but certain individuals can, right? And I think we all really can, in my opinion. I'm not special.
You just need to discipline yourself too.
You have to discipline yourself. You have to be able to look at yourself, and the hard part is not getting depressed, right? And it's just to kind of accept.
So being honest is the most important. Like, being honest of what the results of that analysis simulation really are.
Yeah. Like, right? Yeah. And listen, great conversation. And once again, I want to thank everybody for listening. We're going to wrap up the episode here. Follow us on riskythoughts.to. Do we have like a TikTok yet? I think
I did create the account, but we're not active yet. But we will be soon.
We will be.
And we are going to be on the hunt. We're going to find one of these little fucking punks that drives their car at 80, 85, 90 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, I'm going to ask him, like, do you think you're fucking cool? Like, why do you do it?
Yeah.
Like,
that's going to be the next video we make, seriously. Literally. The only video we're going to have, but we're going to do it. That's going to be the first conversation we have.
Yeah, I'm going to just step in front of the car and just stop the fucking little punk, and we're going to ask him. Okay?
All right, down.
All right.
Okay, thanks everybody for listening, and have a great night.
Good night.